Happy Thursday, everyone. Everyone knows what Thursday night is and what that means. It is time for Night Terrors Radio. As always, I am here, your ever-vigilant host, Ash Hamilton of horror-fix.com. And I've got two of my co-hosts on with me tonight. I've got Rob Pistilli on the East Coast. How are you doing tonight, Rob?
I am living the dream, getting ready for our ice storm.
We currently have ours right now. It's glorious, shimmering, sparkling, deadly. Brian Cartilli, nice to have you back with us, sir.
Good to be here.
I've taken away your mantle of King of the Hill people. You're just now Brian Cartilli, by the way.
I've been demoted.
You haven't been demoted, you've been knighted.
Okay.
Which is basically a demotion, yeah. But that's okay. We're going to have a fun time tonight anyways. The Hill people are still here in support of you, Brian, regardless of whether or not you're sharing their kinship this evening. We've got
still my people.
We've got author Ed Ashton on with us tonight. We're going to have a fantastic night talking about his new novel, Mickey 7, and some other things, too. We're going to pick Ed's brain as we've done in the past. It's great to have you back, Ed. Thank you so much for sharing the evening with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
As always, we're going to bring you things that you never thought you knew you wanted to hear and probably still don't want to hear after you hear them. That includes the daily dose of the nightly news. Please tell me what bizarre things are happening in our weird, wide world today. I know we've got a couple that are just brain squeezers. And to go ahead and get some of that juice wrung out, Rob, why don't you go ahead and take our first news item for this evening?
Well, our first one comes from, I'm not sure how you say this, if it's LAD Bible or LAD Bible. I'm not sure how you say it.
LAD.
LAD Bible, okay. And it comes to us from
LAD
Mars.
Bible sounds very, very English.
Or very, very Roman Catholic Church.
Oh.
Yes, I went there.
You did.
That would be the Lap Bible. Or just a consonant short, but continue.
Right. Okay. So apparently, a UFO hunter is claiming that he found 100% proof of life on Mars. Now, I wish there was a way to share this because it appears to be a reclining figure on top of a Mars rock.
Yeah, we can see that.
Oh, yeah.
The high-tech way I, go about technology here.
So they're just
I think someone
chilling
is
out.
leisurely reading Ed's novel.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what it appears as though.
In a relaxed position.
They got a advanced copy of Mickey 7 and they're just hanging out on Mars reading it. And it says that this guy saw this through analyzing video from the Mars rover. Now, alone, this wouldn't be all that strange, except for on an episode that aired this week of a show called The Truth Is Out There. There's another video clip of what appears to be a bird flying in the Mars atmosphere, also captured by the Mars rover. So inside of a week, there have been 2 published stories of what they're saying is absolute 100% proof of life on Mars. If it is, I mean, this guy is, I think he's doing it wrong because he's not got a spacesuit on that I could see. And he seems to just be chilling. I mean,
well, he's acclimated to the atmosphere.
Oh,
he doesn't need one.
He doesn't have a soda, a bottle of water, nothing.
No beach umbrella.
Nothing. Just hanging out. Just laying on a rock in the middle of nowhere on Mars. And if you look at the expanded photo, as you can see, it's not like it's near anything. It's just other rocks that he's.
Now, do we have size and scale determined there?
No, we don't.
Okay.
They did not put a Pepsi can in the foreground.
There you go. Again, another issue that I have with this photo is that, there's no one of those little scale rulers that they always show.
No.
There's no a pencil, a pen, something to give us, scale. This guy just,
So it could be 3 inches tall or 90 feet long.
right.
We're not sure.
And do we have a reason why he would want to be hanging out on a rock on the surface of Mars?
Because it's 100% proof of life on Mars.
Right,
I mean,
right.
there's not much else to do, really.
I mean, I kind of grew up in Jersey. I'd kind of just hang out on a rock just to have something different.
Yeah, I'm from West Virginia. I'm not throwing any stones.
Yeah.
Midwest here. I mean, we're more than likely doing that already.
Right. So, in all honesty, I guess I was kind of throwing a little shade at this guy, and now I'm kind of realizing he might have it right.
Can I postulate an alternative for just a moment?
Absolutely.
Like, I can see someone at NASA just accidentally hitting that little button that says disengage camera, realizing what they've done, and then they're like, Jim, for God's sakes, just get on the fucking rock. It's only 10 minutes. Just get on the rock. We have to have something.
Do I have to change my clothes first? No. Just get on there.
We can feed the loop back through afterwards, but we need at least 10 minutes to get this done.
Right.
Get on the rock. No, don't pose on your side, flat on your stomach. Okay, Brian, I don't know if you can top this.
Well, I'm gonna have to set the mood first. I'm gonna have to, because this one's a little scary.
White.
This one's a little scary. So I'm gonna turn the lights down. And if you have small children, put them in another room, because
Or just poke holes in the
There
top of the
is.
box. Whatever it is you're doing with your small children.
right, or that, yes. But a paranormal skeptic is convinced
A
that her
paranormal
house-
what? A paranormal
skeptic.
skeptic?
No, that's me.
Oh.
Skeptic is
Okay.
convinced that haunting her house.
Sounds like a ska band from the late 90s.
Yes.
Did you hear Skeptics
Is-
even had all ages show on Thursday?
But her house is haunted by the ghost of a chihuahua.
Oh, Christ.
That's the most annoying kind of ghost there is. Terrifying.
She spotted a little dog in the doorway. So her daughter shared this story on Reddit. Said both of her parents have spoken about unusual sounds coming from the hallway in recent weeks. They hear the sound of toenails being scraped along the hardwood floor. And apparently her dad started telling her that he had on a couple occasions heard sounds like this, toenails on the hardwood, saw a little white ball float down the hallway. But his daughter, who posted this on Reddit, blew him off, thought he was just pranking her. But then she heard the sound when she was home alone, and their only dog was sitting on the couch next to her. And the dog jumped up, ran over to investigate, and the noise stopped. But since then, her mother has seen this little ghost, this little dog, and she came into her bedroom. She thought it was her dog, went into the bedroom. Her dog was asleep on the bed. So we're just going to have to see where this goes, I guess. They're speculating that the Chihuahua is the ghost of her late father's, the woman of her late dad's Chihuahua. The Chihuahua died 2 years ago, was buried with her father after passing 1 week apart from each other. So the woman is absolutely convinced now that her dad is and the deeply loved Chihuahua are together in the afterlife, and the Chihuahua comes back to visit every now and then. And
so the dog came back.
The dog came back, not the dad. Evidently, his work on this mortal coil was finished, but the dog.
But there are pressing matters. For
Yes.
the Chihuahua.
Yeah, the dog still has shit to do, I
And
guess.
it's definitely not a rat.
Apparently not.
Because they're very similar to Chihuahua. You really can't tell the difference.
Yeah, the two are commonly mistaken for one another. Although I do think we have a fantastic book title in here, which is Toenails on the Hardwood, the Chihuahua Files.
There you go.
I could see it now. It's going to be the next, paranormal television show is, Toenails on the Hardwood.
Call Animal Planet.
Well, now that we have got the pressing matters out of the way, the things that everybody's been wanting to hear, the fact that we have undoubtedly just this evening exclaimed that there is life on Mars and there is life in a 2-bedroom apartment that happens to be the afterlife of a little Chihuahua, let's move on. Let's talking to our guest tonight. By the way, thank you for sitting through the news with us, Ed. We do appreciate your persistence this evening.
I'm amazed any guest makes it through the news. To be honest,
luckily we haven't been doing it all that long. It's a bit of a litmus test. Give us about 3 months, the results will be in. We might not be doing the news any longer.
Yeah, there could be a whole lot of I'm out of here.
Oh, there's the bird that flew across the Mars.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we've had Ed on before, but it's been a little bit of a while, Ed. So I think for those new listeners who probably maybe aren't familiar with your last appearance on the show, could you give them a little idea of your background, sort of where you're from, and of course, sort of your journey as an author? If you want to give us a little Reader's Digest condensed version of that for the audience.
Sure. My name's Ed Ashton. As I mentioned earlier, I'm originally from West Virginia, although I do live in Western New York now. I was educated as a writer at Loyola University. I double majored in writing and engineering, if you can believe that. It's a little bit of an odd combo. There's not a lot of crossover classes in that program. I've been writing since then. I sold my first professional story to the newsletter of an Italian sausage company for $99 and a 3-foot sheet pizza. I still consider that to be the best payday I've ever had as a writer.
That's a win.
Yeah. So I sold some short stories and some other stuff when I was younger. I got married, I had a kid, and it became much more difficult for me to justify spending hours a day at my keyboard when I had a little kid who wanted to play with me, who wanted to climb all over me and do stuff. And so I really, for about 14 years, I set writing aside. And then eventually there came a time, much to my surprise, where my kids decided that actually hanging out with dad was not the coolest thing that they could possibly do. And I found myself with free time again for the first time in a very long time. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to write a book. And that was 2013. I finished 3 Days in April, which was my first novel, in 2014. Sold that to HarperCollins. That was published in 2015. Follow up to that, The End of Ordinary, was published in 2017. And then the book that I'm talking about now, which is Mickey 7, was written originally as a novella, about a 25,000 word novella, which my agent shopped around, and we got some interest, but novellas are hard to sell. There's not actually a big market for them. So one of the editors that we talked to suggested, I like this, but you need to make it a full-length novel for us to really have any interest. And so I did that. It took me about another 4 months to turn that into a real book. And it got picked up by Solaris a little while later. It got picked up by Warner Brothers, which obviously was kind of the big deal. And it's just been sort of a cascade of different foreign, domestic and foreign publication contracts. After that, I think we've got 15 separate publication contracts for the book now around the world.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's been a trip. It's been a real trip.
Now, what would you categorize the book as? I mean, if you were looking on the shelf and you were looking for where the book was going to be, what would it be categorized as?
Well, I mean, it's science fiction. You'll find it in the science fiction section. In my mind, there are different types of science fiction. There's different categories of science fiction. a lot of science fiction is what I would refer to as puzzle books. So I don't know if you read like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. It's a great book. It's not. It's a book that people have compared my work to, but in my mind, they're very, very distinct. Andy Weir writes puzzle books. He writes books typically that only focus on one character. There's not a lot of interaction with other characters. It's a character who has a puzzle he needs to solve. The Martian was the same way. You know, Mark Watney has a puzzle he needs to solve. How's he going to survive for 400 days or whatever he needs to do to get back off Mars? And there's this whole series of technical puzzles that he has to get through. I like reading books like that. I could never write a book like that. My books are about characters and about the interactions between characters and relationships between people. To me, that's what's interesting. That's what really drives a story. My plots tend to be a lot more compact than something that you would find from Andy Weir or someone like that. But I think the characterizations and the interactions between the people tend to be maybe deeper and a little more focused to the story.
Now, I got the book on Tuesday. Had a hard time putting it down. Absolutely loved it. And I found it to be, just a very pleasurable read. It was, great interaction between the characters, great development of the main characters. There's a couple characters in there that you kind of like, ugh, I don't like this guy at all. I have no idea, just written, so you're just kind of like, this guy's going to be an ass. I can just tell he's going to be an ass throughout the whole thing. It's perfect. Character wise, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. I think, some science fiction books can get a little bit heavy handed on the sciencey stuff. And I love where yours was, very character based. And there were times when I could see where, it could have been kind of drawn out and expanded and kind of fluffed up, but it was perfect. In the fact, like you said, it was kind of condensed. It was a really quick read. Like Rob said, I couldn't put it down. I couldn't wait to get home from work to finish it up today. And I really enjoyed the story. You got me in a couple parts where I had to think a little bit and what's going to happen with these characters. It was a lot of fun. I highly recommend it to anyone who's a sci-fi fan or just a fan of good character-driven stories that not a lot of frills, bang, right to the point and get to it.
No unnecessary word salad.
Yeah, no.
It was meat and potatoes and just an excellent read for me. I loved it.
Now, can we give the audience a little bit of a synopsis, Ed? So people who have not read the book, people who are, wondering exactly what it is we're talking about, if we could give them a brief synopsis, I think that would be fantastic.
Sure. So Mickey 7 is set about 1,000 years in the future. It's in a future where there's been a disaster on Earth, which has made it mostly uninhabitable, and humanity has essentially fled to the stars and sort of seeded colonies in various places. However, this turns out to be a really difficult thing to do. We are exquisitely tailored to live here on Earth. This is the place that birthed us. This is a place that we evolved to exist on. And what we find is that these other planets out there, some of them are close, some of them are not so close. None of them really fit us. And it's a struggle for humans to survive anywhere off this planet. One of the technologies that they've developed in order to make it possible is the ability to replicate someone's consciousness and essentially clone bioprint bodies. And so by using this technology, they're able to develop what they refer to as expendables, which are people who it's okay for them to go out and do something incredibly dangerous, something even suicidal, because if they die, you can just make a new one. You just print a new one. He's got the same memories, same personality, same everything to everyone around. Mickey Barnes, who's the main character of this book, is an expendable.
Uh-oh.
I think we got a little bit of a lag
Look.
going on, unfortunately, with Ed here.
Glitch in the Matrix.
If you
Oh,
could,
there he
Ed,
is.
the last part talking about Mickey as the main character, if you could do that again for us. We had a little bit of a lag with your video.
Sure. Sorry. Yeah. So Mick, as I was saying, Mickey Barnes he's an expendable. Did you get the bit about the expendables?
Yes.
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 So Mickey Barnes is an expendable. He's signed on for various reasons to take this role on a mission to colonize an almost uninhabitable planet called Niflheim. And at the beginning of the book, he's on his 7th iteration. He's Mickey 7. That's where the title comes from, meaning that he's already died 6 times doing stupid things, things that are necessary for the mission, but really bad for a human body. And at the beginning of the book, he's been given up for lost. And as I think you were sort of mentioning, there's some characters who kind of not so great. He's maybe one of them. Birdo is his best friend from childhood, but is actually a pretty shifty character in some ways. And when Mickey is injured and in a very dangerous situation, Birdo decides it's not worth his trouble to try to get him back because they can always make a new one. And so he essentially abandons him, but then Mickey doesn't die. He makes his way back to the colony to find that they've already produced Mickey 8, his replacement. And for a number of different reasons that are sort of extrapolated in the book, you can't have 2 of the same person at the same time. And so either one of them has to go, or they have to find a way to hide their existence from the rest of the people in the colony. And this is a colony that lives underneath a very small dome, very tight quarters, and it's very, very difficult to pull off. And so that's sort of the central conflict of the book.
Now, either through research or your own curiosity, as far as reading articles, as far as investigating technology, did you research as far as this idea of sort of uploading a consciousness? I know that this is something that has been talked about in scientific circles, but it always seems so speculative that I don't think a lot of people talk about it in terms of hard science. Did you research it? Was there some investigation there? And if so, what can you tell us about what you found?
I mean, this is a concept I've been interested in for a long time. It's actually a philosophical problem that goes back to the mid 1700s. It's called the Teletransport Paradox, which is a question of whether it is possible to sort of continue your consciousness if you could hypothetically completely copy everything about yourself, your hopes, your dreams, your memories, your love of dance music, your hatred of chocolate, whatever it is. All of that is completely accurately copied and can be downloaded into a new body, a new brain. Is that really you? Or is that just somebody else who's running around getting his grubby hands all over your stuff? That's a philosophical problem that John Locke thought about, that a bunch of other people smarter than me have been thinking about for a really long time, going back obviously to a time when it was 100% theoretical. It's rapidly becoming somewhat less theoretical. Ray Kurzweil, who's one of the chief scientists at Google, he is very serious about this. He has expressed many times that it is his intention to do this, to upload his consciousness into a computer matrix. And he believes that this will grant him a form of immortality. I mean, the man takes 220 vitamin pills a day to try to keep himself alive long enough for the computer technology to catch up to his ambition. I don't think we have, at this time, a great idea. We know how to record memories. We know how to record information. We don't have a good model, good neurological model for what constitutes consciousness and what constitutes awareness. We can create a computer that can defeat the best human at chess. We still don't have an idea of what it would take. Is it just more processors? Is it just faster processing speed? What does it take to get that system to be aware, to actually have self-awareness and to think? That's something that we haven't gotten to yet. But I think most people think it's not a completely insurmountable problem.
Well, people just need to watch Short Circuit, Johnny Five.
Yeah, well,
This is a well-placed
Right.
lightning bolt. We all know this.
I'll
Right.
send Kurzweil a note, right? And he'll be happy to hear that.
I think Mary Shelley had this whole thing figured out from the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I said,
When she was like
a long time.
when she was 16.
Mm-hmm.
And we have literally been thinking about it since we've been questioning the very nature of our consciousness. There have been a lot of discussions, hundreds of years of people talking about, are we waking up the same person we went to sleep?
Right.
And I think that some of the earliest discussions sort of based on this replicating consciousness model. Now, my question is are people actively working on the hardware aspect? I know that there's discussions, there's philosophy, but are we actively working on how we would be able to do that with hard technology? Are there people out there that are currently working on this?
I mean, Kurzweil has a team at Google that's thinking about it, and they don't talk much about what they're doing, but they are definitely putting money into it, and they're putting people into it. Whether they're actually making progress with it, in the book, at one point, I talk about how this actually happens in this sort of imaginary world, and the way I have it being announced to the world is the inventor just showing up with a duplicated person. I suspect that if it happens, that's how it's going to happen. They're not going to give us progress updates. They're going to come out with a finished product and say, "Look what we did."
The iPhone 17 and
Exactly.
myself carrying the iPhone 17.
Yep.
And that's when Skynet becomes self-aware.
Right.
Right. And
Exactly.
then the next thing you know, we're, do you want to play a game? And then,
Well, let's go a little ways down the rabbit hole, if you would, Ed, because I think it's sort of where a lot of us feel comfortable anyways. So we're talking about people who are, even though it might be sparingly, the details that they give us about what's happening amongst publicly traded companies. So if people are putting small pieces of information out on publicly traded companies, do we think that there's anything as far as governmental research that might be further along?
I would be very surprised if there's anything that government labs are doing that would be more advanced than what you're seeing coming out of Google Labs. I worked in government military research for a number of years. I worked for the military. I worked for intelligence agencies. So I've got some familiarity for what goes on inside those labs. We had the base where I worked. We had 6 Nobel laureates working there, so they've got horsepower, but they don't have the kind of funding. They don't have the kind of money that Google can put to a project like this. They just don't. I mean, the government obviously has infinite money,
Right.
but they don't allocate it to those sorts of projects.
But it's extremely compartmentalized.
Yes. Everything is extremely and that inhibits progress. That makes it difficult to move forward.
And I think what we've seen, especially in the last 40 years, that we weren't seeing prior to that, is whenever we went through a technological revolution, it was mainly something that was hinging upon space travel, combustion engines. We hadn't really reached computer technology, and now, the people who have the money have that technology. So it's not as if we're having a government agency that's advancing it. We're having the people who actually have the money, who are these people who own Google, advancing it. So I think we've reached a tipping point there.
Which is in the book.
I mean, yeah. Yeah. No, at this point, people like, firms like Google and Facebook, they have more resources than most national governments to throw at these problems. The Chinese government is throwing a lot of money at artificial intelligence, a ton of effort to artificial intelligence. I'm sure the United States government. Now, I've been out of government service for 20 years now, and we were already talking about artificial neural networks at the time that I was working there. I did some early work on ANNs in the late 90s. And I'm sure that I'm sure that research has advanced dramatically, but I would be, as I said, I would be shocked if it were advanced beyond what they're able to do at someplace like Google.
So now, one of the things that in the book is, the tank. We'll just leave it at that. Where does humanity stand in that aspect? I mean, based on research, where do you think we are in that?
Oh, that technology is entirely fanciful at this point.
Okay.
That there's not even any precursor to that sort of technology. I mean, I sort of, in my head, I was sort of picturing like a 3D printer, but for biological tissue,
Okay.
which like conceptually makes sense, but no, there's certainly, to my knowledge, there's no inkling of being able to do that at this time.
So, so with science fiction, a lot of science fiction, traditionally over the years has been kind of cautionary tales of humans and technology and maybe overreaching, going a bit too far. And there's a bit of that in your book.
Mhm.
But it's not like the main driving focus. Was that on purpose?
Yeah, well, as I said, my books are always about people, and that was the focus. That's what I wanted. I wanted to look at the interactions between Mickey and Nasha, Mickey and Berto, Mickey and Marshall, and how those interactions would interact then with each other to sort of drive the plot forward. The sort of technological warnings or the watch out, this stuff is going to happen. I put that stuff in there too. Like, for instance, the concept of interstellar travel, the concept of being able to move from one star to another at speeds that would make it in any way practical. If you've got an object that's moving at a significant fraction of the speed of light, a macro object, something like a spaceship, that thing is carrying an almost inconceivable amount of kinetic energy. And as I demonstrate in the book, and I actually did I did the math on this. I did the calculations on exactly how many joules are being imparted into an ecosystem by an impact like that. I mean, you literally can crack a planet open like an eggshell. There's, I can't remember the name of the book, but there was a book a while ago which was sort of speculating. I mean, you're familiar with the dark forest hypothesis, right? Of why we don't hear any aliens, why no one's communicating with us. One of the theories behind that is the reason they're not communicating with us is because anybody who makes noise, anybody who announces themselves to the universe, gets whacked, gets wiped out. And there's actually a sort of a game theory explanation for why that would be. Because if it is possible to accelerate an object to something like 0.9 or 0.95 C, that's a weapon that you cannot defend against. Because if somebody shoots something at you, it's something, the size of a dump truck moving at that speed could wipe out life on this planet. And if someone decides to shoot something like that at you, the light that announces its arrival arrives a millisecond before the object itself. There's no way to even know it's coming, let alone defend yourself from it, which means anyone out there who has the ability to accelerate something could end you, could extinct you at any time, and there's nothing you can do about it. So rationally, how do you respond? You kill them first. That's the way any rational species would respond to that sort of a threat. So if it is possible, we don't know if it's possible actually at this time to accelerate things to that speed. If it is possible, then the only thing a rational species could do is immediately destroy any other species that makes itself known. And so that's one theory for why we don't hear anyone out there. It's not a happy theory. It's not one that I hope is true. I kind of hope it's actually impossible to accelerate to those speeds, because otherwise it's a very, very grim universe.
But now we know what that dude laying on Mars. That's why he's just laying there,
Right?
Exactly. Not making any noise, not drawing any attention to himself.
Right, just quietly reading Mickey 7.
Yep.
He saw the rover and he's like, "Get out!
Go!
Get out of here!"
I think the idea of, you know, when we watch stories like Star Trek, for example, this idea of a galactic federation is a very romantic one, but really don't think it's very plausible.
I mean, I think that's probably true. And I mean, unless something like the sort of warp technology that they posit in Star Trek is possible, we have no physics right now that would permit that at all. I mean, how would you even administer something like that? I mean, if it takes 20 years, 30 years to even get a message from here to there, how can you have a coherent civilization of multiple planets?
And I think the idea that a lot of people have also, you know, weighed in on is that once you start to develop a technology that would allow you to do this, the danger becomes greater of self collapsing, because if you've got technology with that kind of power, then you've got a destructive force with the equal kind of power, and that either it's probably going to destroy you or you're going to advance past it, where you're no longer a barbaric warlike species. And it seems, at least as humans, that seems almost an insurmountable task.
Well, that's another one of the explanations for Fermi's paradox. That's another one of the explanations for why we don't hear anything out there, is that you know, the vast majority of species that develop advanced technology wipe themselves out before they have a chance to do anything with it. And that unfortunately is pretty plausible too. Again, I hope that one's not true either, but there's a lot of evidence from the way we behave here on Earth that it is.
It just seems like every great technological advancement is designed to kill in one way or another. You know, accidents, or, you know, everything we seem to come across, if it's not designed to kill, it's designed to do something else. And then someone goes, but could we use this to kill?
Well, it's killing and porn. Those are the two. It's always one or the other. Sometimes both, but always one or the other.
I mean, I actively think that some people that I've known in my life have tried to kill themselves through porn.
It's plausible to combine the two. Absolutely.
So one thing that we love to ask our guests, and this is something that we do with great integrity, is that we have a little device that we call the pant shitometer. And what the pant shitometer does is it allows us to ask bigger questions of our guests, like, what is the craziest theory you've heard? What is the thing that sort of was mind-blowing to you, whether it was feasible or not? So without further ado, I'm going to play the pant shitometer.
Pant shitometer.
Jesus Christ.
So that is the question then. In any of your research, even if it has just been an idea that you've thought about, that you've sort of had to take a step back and go, wow, this is really sort of, you know, many layers removed from the usual stuff that I think about, or even through the research, this again is many layers removed from the stuff that I usually read about. What's one of the craziest things that would register at least an 8 on the pant shitometer?
Again, the thing that I thought about a lot when I was writing this book is this idea of the amount of energy that is inherent in space travel, the amount of energy that's inherent in sort of moving from one place to another at those sort of velocities, and the amount of damage you can do with that amount of energy. If you have the energy, if you have the capability to accelerate something to that kind of speed, you've got the capability to wipe out life on the planet. I mean, there's just no question about that. And the question is, it seems quite plausible that, you know, based on the physics that we have right now, that sort of energy can be developed. You know, the stuff that I talk about in the book about antimatter rockets, that's just an engineering problem. That's something we understand the physics behind that right now. And the question then becomes, if someone, goes in, does that engineering, develops that project, what is the probability that they don't at some point use it to wipe out half the people on the planet? I mean, that just seems like an increasing plausible thing that someone would do. That and blackpox. Blackpox freaks me out too. I know you guys familiar with this?
No.
It's a biological weapon that was developed by the Soviets in the late 80s. They actually they loaded up a number of their ICBMs. So they had nuclear ICBMs, right? They also had ICBMs that were loaded with blackpox. And the idea was they launched the nukes first, and then they follow up with the blackpox loaded warheads to wipe out any survivors. Blackpox is a derivative of smallpox with something like a 95% kill rate and an R0 value of 8 or 9, which puts it as roughly as transmissible as measles. So we actually, when I was with the military, we did an analysis of what would happen if somebody took an atomizer filled with this stuff and set it down in Grand Central Station and set it off. Just sort of modeling how the spread would go, and the conclusion we came to, the term for it is national soft kill, which means we didn't think it would wipe out every single human being in North America, but we came up with a number around 70% in the first 6 weeks, which is enough to basically end society. The survivors would be sort of scattered and hiding in huts in the woods. And having no contact. The only way you'd survive is if you had no contact with other human beings. And so basically it would completely wipe out any vestige of civilization on this continent within about 6 or 8 weeks.
Yeah, that's pretty high on the pan-shitometer.
Okay.
Yeah. That'll do it.
Yep, that got me.
Now, and for something like that, like how persistent is blackpox? Like how long would people literally have to be in hiding? For the
as long as there were hosts, as long as there were surviving hosts. The only way something like that goes away is if all of its potential hosts are dead. So as long as you've got basically they would have you would have to hide in a bunker someplace, long enough for basically all the infected people and all the people that those infected people could potentially infect to all be dead. Or to have recovered. Like I said, about 5% of people who get it do recover.
And in this country right now, it'd be even worse.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of places to hide. And honestly, there's not a lot of people with the sort of skills that would be needed to survive in an isolated cabin for several months,
right,
without any contact with any other human being.
And suddenly,
that's a tough thing to do.
I hate to keep going back to movies, but suddenly we're at the end of the thing with David Keith,
yes,
and Kurt Russell. We're staring at each other in the snow.
You'd have to wait out the death of a generation almost. For it to even sort of make sense to come out of hiding, right?
It's transmissible enough that it would basically sweep through the entirety of the population over a period of a few months. And so, like I said, most people would be dead. Some small number of people would recover and survive, and those people would be immune. And so you would be able to come back out of hiding eventually. But you'd always have to be worried about some reservoir of, some viruses. I honestly don't know whether smallpox is able to jump to animals, back and forth to animals. It was tailored for humans. I don't know if it was able to jump back and forth to animals. But if you've got an animal reservoir, then you're just completely screwed, because, and that's why we have so much problems with the flu.
Mm-hmm.
The flu can jump back and forth between humans and animals. And so it's just and the same thing with COVID. Actually, COVID actually can move through animals as well. And so, as long as you've got animal reservoirs, even if you completely isolate your human population, the virus is going to be waiting for you when you come back out.
So here's a question I have that is directly relevant to COVID, actually. So as a writer, what you've seen as far as the country, the division, and what's happened socially, as a writer, what has COVID shown you?
I don't know that COVID has shown me anything that I didn't already know on some level.
What is it validated?
Yeah, I have not been very surprised by the reactions and by the way that this country has behaved. I kind of assumed from the jump that we were going to have a rough go of this, because there's just a streak in the American character of, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do, which is not present in most societies, in lots of societies, but it's definitely it's a very strong streak here of, you tell me not to stick my hand on that hot stove, I'm going to put my hand on the stove just to show you. And that's a lot of the sort of behavior that we're seeing right now. And there are a lot of people who are dead right now who didn't need to be dead because of that.
So we have an inherent lack of self-preservation here in the States.
I mean, I think it's more just, it's not a lack of self-preservation. It's more just sort of inherent contrariness. If I came up with the idea to save myself, then it's fine. If you came up with the idea and told me to do it, forget it. I would rather just jump off the cliff. Yeah. That just seems to be part of our national character for some reason.
So we've heard that there's been a lot of interest in the book, Mickey 7, and you had actually mentioned something off the air about the fact that we might be seeing a follow-up to it, correct?
Yeah, there's a sequel. It's already been written. It's already been sent off to the publishers, gone through the first round of editing. It's off with the copy editors now and off into the production world. And so that is right now due to come out in the first quarter of 2023. So about a year from now.
And you mentioned, while it's a sequel, it's going to kind of explain more about kind of like the society at large. Like, is it going to necessarily take place in the same colony?
Oh yeah, it picks up same characters, same people,
okay.
Same situation. It picks up about a year after the end of Mickey 7.
Okay.
But it does go into a lot more depth. It's really more about now the relationship between the human colony and the native, the native
gotcha.
creatures, and
Gotcha.
how they interact and try to find a way to live together without killing each other.
Now, when I was doing a little looking around prior to the show, I saw that there's already kind of some movie talk for Mickey 7.
A lot more than talk, yeah. Yeah.
Are you allowed to discuss that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can discuss the stuff that's already on the press, sure. Okay. So that, yeah, the manuscript actually, this was really weird. So I wrote the book, right, and my agent sold it to Solaris, which is a sort of a mid-sized British imprint, and so they picked it up, and we sold them worldwide English rights. And then after that, Warner Brothers decided that they were interested in the manuscript long before it was published, obviously. And Brad Pitt's production company picked it up, and they optioned it. And that obviously generated a lot more interest in the manuscript. And so then we sold North American rights to St. Martin's Press. That's who's publishing now in North America, and a bunch of foreign contracts and so on and so forth. So that's all been in the works for well over a year now. There's been a script. Bong Joon-ho has been attached as the director, who obviously is an absolute genius. So I could not possibly be happier about that. Robert Pattinson has been attached as the star of the film, which so I could not be happier about that. I think he's
still experiencing some of these lags. Unfortunately, they come and go.
Dropping in and out again.
There you go. A little bit.
You're back. So you said Robert Pattinson. You're thrilled to have him on board.
Yeah. I was watching him on Jimmy Kimmel last night, actually, and I could picture him as Mickey in that. It just the way he presents himself, the way he carries himself. I think he's going to be absolutely perfect for the role. So yeah, I'm very excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, it's very cool to see him. I mean, he had his stint in Harry Potter, and then of course, the Twilight movies, and then he kind of faded away, and now he's back with Batman, and I'm very excited. When I saw his name attached to this, I was poking around on Amazon, and it said Robert Pattinson. And I was like, very cool. And after reading the book, I think that's a great choice for Mickey.
Yeah, no, I agree. He did a bunch of indie films, actually.
Yes.
In between sort of Twilight and Batman, he did a bunch of indie films. Showed some really, really amazing range as an actor. Like I said, it's a challenging role because he's got to play two different people. He's got to play Mickey 7 and Mickey 8. And they're subtly different characters. They're the same person, but not really the same person. And I think it's going to be a stretch, but I think it's one that he's going to handle it really well. I'm very excited to see.
Now, for people who are wondering what books you've already written, what you've currently got in the pipeline, and then of course are looking for news on what's coming out, what are some of the best channels for people to take a look at that online?
I mean, if you're interested in my work, the best place to go is to my website, which is edwardashton.com. If you just pop over there, it's got links to all my books, links to, I've got several dozen short stories that have been published in different places. Those are mostly free. You can just, pop over to the different websites where they're published and take a look, see if you like it. If you like my short stories, you'll probably like my books. If you don't like my short stories, buy the books anyway. They're
I will say, buy the damn books. I have read 2 of your novels now, loved them both. Had a hard time putting either one of them down. Mickey 7 is it's right up there with one of the best things I've read in probably the last 4 or 5 years at least.
That's very kind. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, we can't thank you enough for being on with us tonight, Ed. I'm sure people can't wait to get their hands on the book and read it. And then with the news, of course, that there's a film in development, I think that also is very exciting for people who will read the book and become fans of it. Most certainly. You have a couple minutes off the air for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
We want to thank everyone who popped in the chat room tonight. We had quite a bit of people come and go. Anyone who was listening, people who are listening on YouTube and Twitch, and of course, Facebook. We will be back next Thursday, as always. What do we have lined up for the next few Thursdays, Rob?
Of course, you put me on the spot when my brain just... Paranormal
Caught on Camera.
Yes, Paranormal Caught on Camera. And then we have collectibles, because collectibles got shifted from last week to beginning of March. And then I believe we have a call-in show that we're scheduled, just like a night of just us being us and people calling us up and telling us how stupid we are.
Well, I can't wait for next week. And of course, I can't wait for collectibles because that's obviously something I have a very invested interest in. Again, thank you so much, Ed. We had a fantastic time tonight talking about the book and just sort of picking your brain, which is always fun. Again, this is the fastest hour on the internet. We'll be seeing everyone next